Oh, hey, Happy New Year. How is your second day of 2024 going? It's a brand new year. We have turned the calendar page. It is January, the month of new beginnings and fresh starts, and brand new set of 365 days of wonderful, joy-filled moments that we get to spend in our growing space with our plants, eating our plants, admiring our plants, enjoying all of the many blessings and bounties of our little edible plants. It's so exciting. Man, January. January is one of my favorite months for several reasons. I mean, I'm a big fan of like clean slates and new beginnings and fresh starts and just like having that invitation to reset, to prune whatever is no longer serving. More recently, I've really come to enjoy like the bare trees and the gray sky. And I feel like it's just another opportunity and invitation to be introspective. So I'm thankful for that. January is also my birthday month. Woohoo! Yes, towards the end of the month. So maybe that's another sweet little reason why I love the month of January is because I get to celebrate a birthday, and birthdays are the best. So just happy January. I'm going to start off with that just mood and intention for today and this month. And this year is just happiness, finding happiness and joy in the spaces that we love to be in most. I'll tell you at the top of this episode, my favorite places to be. One, obviously, is with plants. I feel like this goes without saying. But yeah, totally. With plants, preferably, of course, this would be in my own growing space. I just also like being out in the middle of a forest, because why not? Or like in a greenhouse full of tropical plants. Or in the middle of the desert where I can just look at a cactus and find the beauty and peacefulness. Plants, they got good energy. I like being around plants and being in their energy. In today's episode, I wanted to spend some time just looking at the year ahead to be mindful of different time frames for the year, time frames for different growing seasons for our zone. So I'm saying our zone. If you're new to this podcast, I am based in Charlotte, North Carolina, which is zone 8A. So we have a fairly moderate weather pattern, climate here, and we're really able to grow edible things year round. So there's always something that we can be harvesting. There's always something that we can be sowing or planting or planning to sow or plant, but always something to be harvesting, which I find really encouraging about living in the South and being able to grow food here. This episode is going to be a quick little introduction and overview of all of the magical things related to timing for planting in 2024. So without further ado, let's go ahead and kick off this first episode of a new year. Wow. So glad you're here. Thanks for tuning in. Here we go. Welcome to the Growing Space podcast. I'm your host, Farmer Erin, owner of the Patio Farmer, and I believe that no matter what size space you have, you can grow food at home. Tune in each week as I share my best tips, tricks, and encouragement for tending to homegrown edible plants. I am here to support your food growing journey. One of the biggest changes the food growing community nationally experienced in 2023 was the announcement or the launch, the reveal of the brand new USDA agricultural zone map. And if you don't know what I'm referring to here, I will put a link in the show notes for you to check it out later. Basically, what the ag zone or the hardiness zone map does is it takes a 30-year average of winter lows for specific geographic points. And it essentially maps this average of winter lows over this period of time into different ranges. And then the ranges become zones. And this really dictates the general recommendation for crops that do well growing in different geographies. I think it's like every 10 or 12 years, the USDA will update this hardiness zone map. And so last year, 2023, it was time for an updated map. This will probably surprise absolutely nobody. The planet is warming, you guys. Newsflash. So and I say we, like Charlotte, the Charlotte region used to be split between zones 7B and 8A. Now, typically, the lower the number is, the cooler your climate is. So being zone 7B, that is a cooler climate than zone 8A. And now, according to this new hardiness zone map, most of the Charlotte region is now officially 8A. So basically, all that means, you guys, all that means is that the USDA has now indicated that we have a warmer climate. Another really important piece of information to know for your climate, your region, are your average frost dates. 2 average frost dates each year. In the spring, we have our last average frost date. And in the fall, we have our first average frost date. I will also put a link in the show notes to the Farmer's Almanac. You can put in your zip code, and the Farmer's Almanac will give you an indication of when your first and last average frost dates are. So if you haven't done that either, I would recommend that you check that out as well. According to the Charlotte Douglas International Airport Climate Station, the last average frost date for spring of 2024 is going to be April 5th. And the first average frost date for 2024 is going to be October 30th. But within those dates are 207 days. And these frost dates are calculated with a 30% probability. Okay. I'm going to repeat that. The first and last frost dates are predicted with a 30% probability, which means that there is a 70% improbability, meaning that this is, in the best attempts, an educated guess for what will be reality. But this is also really helpful information to keep in mind as you're planning your space and what all you want to grow in 2024. And these dates are particularly important for crops that are sensitive to a freeze. So, and there's different kinds of freezes. You can have a light freeze, you can have a moderate freeze, you can have a severe freeze. The link that I'm going to share with you to the almanac kind of indicates what these different types of freezes, these different severities of freezes are. Where this comes into play is when you're growing things that are frost intolerant or freeze intolerant. And these are going to be crops that grow in the summer, in the warmest months of the year. So typically these are going to be your tomatoes, anything that flowers and fruits is going to be most sensitive to a frost. So this is going to include your tomatoes, your cucumbers, your squash, your eggplant, your peppers, even like okra and green beans and basil, all of your traditional summer crops, generally speaking, should be planted between April 5th and October 30th. Your crops that grow in the spring and fall, like your leafy greens, your broccoli, your cabbage, your cauliflower, kale, collard greens, lettuce, spinach, arugula, and your root vegetables. So everything from carrots to parsnips and radish and rutabaga. If you're into rutabaga, so yummy. All of those, plus your bulb vegetables. So your onions, your green onions, your garlic, and then most of your herbs as well. Most of your herbs are pretty chill, no pun intended. When it comes to freezing temperatures, perennial herbs do just fine. Most of our herbs are perennial. Ones that are not perennial are your parsley and your cilantro, both of which do just fine in the cold. Basil is an annual or a seasonal herb, and that's more of a summer herb. Dill, it's a little bit more flexible, but it definitely likes more moderate, mild temperatures. So any of those spring and fall veggies, again, your leafy greens, your root veggies, your bulb veggies, and most herbs do just fine at being grown, being planted, being sown before the last average frost date, so before April 5th and after October 30th. If you plant any of those summer veggies, while there's still a risk of a frost or a freeze, you just have to be more diligent about checking the forecast and being mindful of what needs covered and what needs protected. And, I'm going to go back to that 30% probability. The odds are ever in our favor that we would have a frost or a freeze of some sort between April 5th and October 30th. I do want to talk about sunlight and sun exposure. Right now, it's January, and the sun is sitting at an angle in the southern sky. So just quick reminder of our little planet and how we move around that big, gorgeous, radiant orb of energy that we call the sun. We are at an angle, right? We are angled on our axis as we are rotating, obviously. This is our day. And then as we go around the sun, we rotate as well. These are our seasons. We change our perspective to the sun, right? And that's what creates our changes in weather and seasons and temperature, all that good stuff. Because we are in the northern hemisphere, the sun is situated towards our south, right? So if we find the sun is always going to be moving in the south-facing expanse of our perceived sky, right? So as we move from winter to summer, our angle and our perspective towards the sun changes. So our experience as the sun in the summertime is more directly above us. We have a longer expanse as the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. This is what gives us those long days and all of that wonderful summer heat, which contributes to the summer humidity, but that's okay. It's all good. And then the opposite happens in the winter. So we just passed our winter solstice. Yes, we have just entered the winter season. The beautiful thing about winter is that our days are becoming ever longer. With each day that passes, we're getting closer and closer to that other solstice, the summer solstice, where the sun is directly above us. But right now, we are experiencing the sun very much at an angle. So if you were to look on a bright sunny day, if you were to look at the sun, it's not going to be directly above you. It's going to be angled towards the south as it moves from east to west across our perceived sky. Our perspective of the sun is that it is at a lower angle. And what does this mean? Of course, well, this means that our days are shorter and our sun exposure is less. There's kind of a sweet spot in which plants prefer to have a set amount of sun exposure as they grow. Do you get 6 to 8 hours of sun? That's really what you need. And that amount of direct sun exposure is going to be best for your plants. The frost dates are important. The temperature outside is important, but also that sun exposure is just as important as the temperatures. I want to take just a quick moment here and hear a message from the sponsor of this podcast. So let's do that real quick, and then we'll jump back in and continue talking about, planning for the year ahead. And I'm going to walk us through month by month the different things that you should keep in mind, or the different tasks that you can be thinking of to grow more in 2024. This podcast is sponsored by Plant Club by the Patio Farmer. Plant Club by the Patio Farmer is a monthly subscription service I started in 2020. It's a membership-based opportunity to take your growing journey to the next level. With 4 different membership options, you get to decide the amount and kind of support that's right for you. All Plant Club members receive access to my online community through a platform called Circle. Having access to this platform allows members to share pictures, ask questions, celebrate harvests, and get to know each other. All Plant Club members also have access to free seeds each month, along with information on how to plant and tend to their crops, with seeding instructions and downloadable resources from the Patio Farmer's resource library. Membership starts at just $14 a month. Join Plant Club today by visiting my website, thepatiofarmer.com/membership. Also, I'll just put a little plug in here at the very end and give you the heads up that if you are really committed to growing food in 2024 and you want to have my help every month, every step along the way, and you feel like Plant Club would be a great way of supporting this new journey or continuing on this journey of growing your own food, then you may consider doing an annual subscription to Plant Club. And if you do, I take off 10% of your total membership price if you prepay for the whole year. If you're interested in committing to a whole year, 12 months of Plant Club membership, then when you sign up, there's 2 steps. First, you'll fill out a little Google form, which I use to collect some basic information, and then you'll be directed to set up your payment at the level which you choose. And if you choose an annual subscription versus a month-to-month or monthly subscription, that 10% off discount is already applied for you. I have the full lineup for 2024 listed on my website. That's also where you'll find the link to join. Okay. Hope to see you in Plant Club. It's so much fun. All right. Back to the show. I'll just pass along this little piece of advice around planning and around the size of your growing space. So the bigger your space is, or the more square footage you have, the more ground space, the more beds, the more containers you have, the more flexibility you're going to have with planting throughout the year. But if you have a small space, if you're working with one raised bed, or maybe a handful of containers, if you truly are on a patio or a balcony, if your space is limited, then the sooner you start planting, or the earlier in the season you can get things planted, then that will continue to roll over from season to season. So most of our edible plants are annuals. You could also call these seasonal plants. They will grow for like 3 to 4 months in their like ideal form before they start feeling stressed, before they succumb to some kind of disease, what have you. Their ideal lifespan is 3 to 4 months. And then most annuals want to produce a seed quickly and spread that seed and then die. And then that plant is done. That plant is not coming back. That plant has fulfilled its purpose and its calling. Most of our edible plants, our fruits and veggies, are annuals. They're reseeding annuals. So the earlier you can start your plants for whatever season you are planning to start with this year, then the earlier you'll be able to transition to the next season. Now, of course, as humans, we experience 4 seasons, right? We have spring, summer, fall, and winter. Typically, when we're talking about growing seasons, we have 3 main opportunities to plant outdoors. We have spring, summer, and fall. Now, the fall season can carry over into winter, and our spring season can actually start in winter. But typically speaking, we have 3 growing seasons: spring, summer, and fall. January for me very much is a time of planning. It's a time of being really intentional and also just providing my body a chance to rest and recoup and recharge for everything that lies ahead in the year. February, we're still in winter, obviously, but we're kind of inching, we're getting closer to that April 5th deadline. Usually after Valentine's Day is a great time to start some things indoors and outdoors. February is the time to begin slowly and appropriately. Really, there's only 3 crops that I would recommend starting indoors, period. But you do you. I'm going to do a whole episode later on in February about starting seeds indoors. This is also the whole theme of February's plant club is starting tomatoes inside. So if you're interested in learning more about that in a really hands-on way, another shameless plug for Plant Club because it's just so much fun. And I'm here for you. The 3 things that I would recommend starting from seed inside in February to be planted later after the last frost, officially, not average, but officially, are tomatoes, peppers, and eggplant. So those are things that you can be starting indoors to plant later on. The ground is not frozen. You can start planting things outside. Seeding. You can start seeding things outside. What do I like to seed in February outside in my raised beds? Peas. Hands down, they go in February. Also, if I'm doing any onions or parsley, cilantro, carrots even, those can all be started outside directly. You can do it. It's not as scary as it sounds. The equinox happens in March, usually mid-March. And this year, our equinox is on March 19th. And on the equinoxes, of course, this is when we experience equal days, equal amounts of daylight, and equal amounts of darkness. We have 2 equinoxes, just like we have 2 solstices. This is the halfway point between the winter solstice and the summer solstice. And it's officially spring. So really from like the beginning of March all the way through the month is a great time to be planting your spring vegetables. And by spring vegetables, I do not mean your tomatoes, your peppers, your squash. No. Because remember, it's March and our last average frost date isn't until the beginning of April with a 30% probability. So in March, I like to plant my leafy greens. I usually do a full round of kale because I'm just obsessed. I can never have enough kale. Now, something to keep in mind, and of course, the more you grow throughout the seasons and throughout the years, then the more you'll be able to like fine tune this practice for yourself. But maybe in the spring, if you're like me, you might choose things that mature faster and then save the longer crops for fall. So the leafy greens that take the longest are going to be your cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts. What I have found to be most successful is to save those big brassicas, those big plants, to plant in the fall. And instead in the spring, plant things like lettuce and peas and carrots. Carrots take a while too, but I still plant them in the spring because I'm obsessed. And you'll find things like that too, that you're just like, I can't not plant this. For me, that's carrots and kale, hands down. So, you might choose to plant your smaller, faster maturing, like radish. Oh my gosh, radish is great. Radish grows in like less than a month. It's fantastic. Maybe you choose to plant those things in the spring. So that way you're able to enjoy them. You're not feeling super crunched on time. And then once that space is available, then you go ahead and plant your summer vegetables. So then April rolls around. And the first week in April is our last average frost date. Hurrah. But, again, 30% probability there. So maybe if you are planting your spring things in March, you're enjoying them in April. And maybe towards the end of the month, you have space beginning to open up. You could also take the risk and skip the spring planting and go right to summer in early April, with the mindset of protecting those tender, freeze-intolerant vegetables throughout the month and until all risk of frost has passed. Or you could be like me and enjoy all of your spring veggies stress-free, relatively. And then the very beginning of May, go ahead and start transitioning. So at that point, you have 2 full months of growing and going ahead and rotating in early May to summer vegetables. And typically, I don't want to say always, but typically, once May rolls around, you are in the clear of a frost or a freeze, definitely by Mother's Day. You get through May, and then June rolls around. June offers a whole new opportunity to plant tons of summer vegetables like sweet potatoes and winter squash and okra and tons of other things. And then July rolls around. In July, your main focus is just going to be surviving the heat, right? Surviving the disease and the pests that come with the heat. Unfortunately, it's just part of that month. It's also when a lot of people tend to go on vacation and take trips and spend time with their families, spend time out of their growing spaces. So just being super mindful of those two things. In July, August is still very warm, very hot, very humid in our climate. August is also when school starts back up, which is great, but also for parents can be distracting, again, from our plants. Totally fine. All of your summer vegetables are doing what they do. You're still keeping up with your harvests and enjoying as much as possible those summer veggies, because the next month, September, is when you want to be starting to transition your summer growing space into your fall growing space if you choose to grow a fall, round of veggies. At Labor Day weekend is the mark. It's like, okay, now you really need to start pulling out the tired summer vegetables, the tired summer plants, and replacing them with your fall vegetables, which, as I mentioned at the top of this episode, spring and fall share the same crops. So your leafy greens, your root vegetables, your bulbs, and your herbs can all be planted in the fall. The sooner you get your fall vegetables planted, the better. Why? Because of the sun exposure. So in September, we celebrate the second equinox of the year, the autumnal equinox. And for 2024, that will be September 22nd. So again, kind of like third week in September is the autumnal equinox. And by that point, maybe a week or two after, you want to have all of your fall vegetables planted because of that equal sun exposure. As we move from the autumnal equinox to the winter solstice, we will be experiencing the sun more at that angle in the southern sky. And so we will be experiencing less and less sun until we get to the winter solstice, which is, of course, when we start moving towards more sun, towards the vernal equinox or the spring equinox. So September is when you want to get all of your fall veggies planted as much as possible, however many you want to grow, get them all in September. And once October hits, you're just kind of watching things grow. Maybe you're starting to harvest a couple of things, probably not a whole lot yet. And then at the end of October, we mark our first average frost date. So again, with a 30% probability that the 30th of October is going to bring our first frost of the season. Now, once the frost comes in the fall, all of your summer veggies, unless you go to great extents to keep them going, that first frost is what's going to nip all of your summer vegetables that still remain. But if you wait until that point, late October, then the sun exposure isn't as strong as it was in September. And if you were to try to plant something, you may have limited success because of the sun exposure in the end of October. So, October, things are definitely starting to wind down. The frost is here. That's fine. You can also, on Halloween, generally, is when you can plant your garlic, which is great. I did a whole episode on garlic this past fall, and I would recommend, if you are interested in growing garlic, to go back and give it a listen. Or if you're currently growing garlic this winter, give it a listen. And then, November's here after that, and December, and then we are back in that mindfulness, that those months of intention and just taking a break, resting, recharging, harvesting what we can, and enjoying the coolness. So that is really the year of growing in a nutshell, month to month, season to season, understanding our frost dates, understanding your ag zone and what all that means. So hopefully you have found some new insights, new knowledge to take with you throughout all of 2024. The last 4 years, every January, I have shared a planning calendar that I write cover to cover. Every year, there's a different kind of theme or intention. The first year that I did this, it would have been 2021. The goal was to talk about all the things you can grow and, touch on certain things that you could do each month in your growing space. In 2022, it was all about sowing seeds and highlighting different crops that you can start from seed year round in our climate and in our zone. I deemed 2023 the year of mastery. And I had 6 different master skills that you would learn, and then different ways that you could practice those with worksheets and resources and tons of fun stuff. Then this year in 2024, the planning calendar is focused on setting weekly intentions and having weekly reminders, weekly advice for growing food at home. And I call the 2024 calendar Growth. It has 52 weeks of intentions, reminders, and advice for growing food at home. All of my planning calendars are digital. You purchase them online, and then you get a link and you get the full calendar available to you in a digital format. I create these all to be printed fairly easily. So if you want to print out your calendar, you certainly can. Or if you're interested in getting my 2024 planning calendar, I will put a link in today's show notes. But if you join Plant Club at the no, grow, or whoa level in 2024, you automatically get this calendar this month. So yeah, just be sure to, if you want to join Plant Club, that's great. But you can also just purchase this calendar outright. It is $35. And when you purchase it in January, I will grant you special access to my online community on Circle. Every week, I will share that week's page of the calendar in Circle. And thanks for tuning in to this first episode of the year. If you're brand new to this podcast, then I would recommend going back and listening to some of my previous episodes. This is episode 15. It's so crazy to think about that. But this is episode 15. And I'm so excited for the next 51 weeks of 2024 and all that we have to learn and share and grow together. At the end of every podcast, I share with you a special little tidbit or morsel of information. And today, I'm going to share with you this fact that I've been really interested in lately, and it keeps surfacing in social media posts, or I don't know, it just keeps popping up for me. The color green, which is also just happens to be my favorite color, obviously, but green is the easiest color for our eyes to see because of the wavelengths of light. They're the shortest, and it's the easiest for our eyes to perceive the color green, which is why the color green is so soothing and relaxing to us humans. There's your fun fact. Even more of a reason to grow something green this year. Next week, special little announcement for the episodes to come in January. I'm going to do a mini series. I'm really excited about these. So we're going to do a mini series on plant families. So every week, we're going to highlight a different plant family and talk about the different members, the different characteristics, the different growing specifications for these different plants, and just go through the families. I've got a handful of them to share with you. This series could be a 5-episode series. I might go to 6 or 7 episodes. I'm just going to kind of feel it out and see how things go here. But next week, we are going to start that off. And the first plant family that we're going to talk about is, okay, spoiler, it's my favorite. And it's the brassicas. I just love them so much. And if you're like a brassa who, yeah, then you'll want to tune in next week. And I will introduce to you the brassicas and all of the wonderful members of that family. Happy 2024. Thanks for tuning in. And we will see you next week.